Morning. High trans rights suits? We can go with that. Yeah. Sure. Let's do that. No, it won't be a longer episode. I'm not expecting it. The last time I had Doughboy on, it was a 2-hour episode, so I don't think Emil will go that long, but we'll see how things go. I'm all for, who was the NBA player that got themselves in trouble for, they were streaming a game of Fortnite and they used like a slur at some point. Didn't that happen? What is this music from? Somebody in chat's gotta know. What is the barnacle joke? I saw Falco. I saw Falco tweet that, and I didn't get the what's the reference to that. Oh, a typo. That's kind of cringe. Barnissel. Did that happen during the set me and Lily did yesterday? I didn't have chat up. Did. Well, hopefully you guys had fun. I had fun. I had fun commentating that set. Oh. Well. You're gonna get plenty of practice spelling humpback pump track correctly, apparently. This is Mega Man 7, by the way, Slash Man. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, or Spotify, while you're busy downvoting everyone in the +3 server suggestions, already accepting defeat at the hands of Team Shiver's zombies, trying to summon Zukaners like it's a demon in your bathroom mirror. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Unless I don't. Here we are at episode 200. And I don't have anything special or unique planned other than bringing Emil on, who I am now having a tradition of bringing on every 100 episodes, it seems. And perfect timing with the Ludi season going on. But I will say this. Whenever I'm on somebody else's podcast or show or stream or anything like that, and they ask me about the Popcast, I always say that I like doing this, and as long as I like doing it, I'll continue to do it. And it just so happens that it's an added bonus that other people like it as well. That is true, but at the end of the day, if other people didn't enjoy what I was doing, I wouldn't spend 200 episodes just talking into a wall for the past 3 years. So as much as I enjoy doing the Popcast because it's something that I have complete control over what it is that I want to do and talk about, the only reason we've made it to 200 episodes is because of the idiots in chat, the people who watch the YouTube, and the people who make clips of me saying Bofa and not recognizing that it's D's nuts joke. So to all of you who've been a part of this, and I'll have a tweet out tomorrow of every single person that's been a part of the podcast. There are a ton of people that have been interviewed or created overlays or ran the show in my absence. So in all seriousness, thank you all for being a part of this. And we'll do another 200 and then we'll call it quits there. How does that sound? Before we call anything quits, I thought for sure that it was going to be a while before we see Splatoon return to Northern California. And instead, it was announced yesterday that Genesis 10, or Genesis X, as they like to call it, is going to be bringing back Splatoon for the first time since Genesis 7. For the first time in 4 years, January of 2020 was the last time Genesis had a Splatoon event. Splatoon is coming back to... Well, Splatoon's coming back to Genesis. This is awesome. This is a really cool thing. And it's something I kind of hinted at when I talked about Big House being canceled. How the, in Magic's statement, he kind of alluded to the fact that the Splatland TOs felt like there was a lot of, I guess, congestion as far as lands were concerned, and they didn't want to oversaturate the land market. And one thing I was pointing out, it makes sense. Riptide and Big House are same location of the country, basically same region, and roughly a month apart from each other. So yeah, they're slightly overlapping, but there's this big event going on in California, the West Coast, where we don't see any Splatoon action other than Hammer's Southern California local. And it happens at the beginning of the year, where we traditionally don't see any Splatoon action because Low Tide City is the first event of the year. Wouldn't it be cool if Splatoon went back to Genesis? And how about that? Splatoon is going back to Genesis. Genesis 7 was the first time I ever went to a Splatoon LAN, and it was so awesome. It was eye-opening to me. And I realized then, okay, these LANs, this is what this is all about. And that was before I was like into commentary. It was well before the Popcast. So I was just there as just like a civilian, just enjoying everything and realizing these things are so cool. And at the end, if you recall, during that Genesis, Riptide was announced. And Beacon was the thing. I had signed up. I had a team. I was going to be going to play in Beacon. I know Mud Cup had a Heartland, kind of like a Michigan local that I was going to be going to. Riptide was going to be that year. All that stuff got canceled because of COVID. And thankfully, years later, things have started to return full force. We're still wearing masks, but people were wearing masks at lands anyway. So it's kind of like nothing's really changed. So Splatoon going back to Genesis is awesome. It's going to be in February in San Jose, Northern California. And the timing of this works out. 3 months. So Genesis is going to be in February. 3 months after that, in Texas is Low Tide City. And 4 months after that is Riptide in Northern Ohio. So portions of the country are all covered as best as you can, and they're all spaced out pretty evenly. So I'm really interested to see how 2024 is going to go as far as the land scene is concerned. And for those of you deep East Coast, in the north, I guess you could say, northeast, Big Dapples is doing things pretty consistently as well. So I hope everything works out in 2024 with those lands. I hope the biggest Splatoon lands ever that happened twice this year is something that continues to happen going forward. As far as the pop guns going to Genesis, it's not likely. My wife and I talked about it yesterday. Even though PJ will be old enough to get COVID vaccines at that time, it's flying with it would technically be a newborn baby, but he'd be, 8-9 months at that point. It's still, don't really want to fly all the way out to California with a newborn baby. Also, there's a difference between a LAN in the middle of Texas and a LAN in a big major city in California. Like there's not as much a metro LAN as opposed to what you see at these resort parks here. It's going to be closer to Big House, that kind of style of LAN, as opposed to one of these more, let's just go drive to Walmart and get a pack of waters for a hotel room kind of LAN that you would see at the Riptide or Low Tide cities. So Low Tide City, if that gets confirmed, which I'm assuming it will be, that is much more likely for the pop guns to go to. But my point being, I'm just because we're not going doesn't mean we're not endorsing it. I hope as many people that can go to this Genesis event. I've had it on good authority that one of the reasons Genesis did not bring Splatoon back for the Genesis 8 and 9 is because they didn't feel like it was something that was worth their time. And this might be them taking a chance on it after seeing the success of Riptide and Low Tide City this past year. So I hope the turnout is strong. I hope the whatever stream the event is going to be on is well viewed. And I hope everything works out. When we talked to Doughboy last time, he kind of alluded to the fact that the lands are not a money-making thing. And Splatoon is definitely not a money maker as far as lands are concerned. We're doing these things because, because the TOs are crazy, but because they love it. So hopefully this is something that works out for everybody. And when PJ gets a little bit older, we'll fly him out to San Jose. Shout out to it's been confirmed last night who the head TOs for this event are. It is Hammer and Magic. Hammer being the person who put together the Southern California land that has been going on pretty consistently now. I guess a local for Southern California is now going to be one of the head TOs for this event. Super excited for Hammer. I'm glad she's getting that opportunity. And especially being someone in California makes a lot of sense to, and also it's a new person that they're bringing in to the Splatland thing. So I'm glad new people are getting shown, hey, here's how these things are going to go. In partnering Hammer with Magic is the perfect matchup. Magic has had a hand in pretty much every single land. I maybe not a Riptide, but still runs the Philadelphia local, has Philadelphia local, did Low Tide City this last year, and has been a part of Big House. Having that Big House experience is going to pay huge dividends for them going to Genesis, because they're going to be similar kind of style things. So Hair and Magic are going to do a fantastic job, and more likely than not, we'll just be keeping an eye on it here at home. And West Coast, hey, represent. You guys have gotten nothing for 4 years. Now's your time to get something going there. News of tournaments that may be of interest to the casual listener of the Popcast. It's Low Ink Week. The first Low Ink in 2 months, and I will be doing my first Low Ink preview in 3 months. I remember the last time we had a Low Ink, Nito did the preview, and Nito sucked. Absolutely trash at it. It did not correctly predict the team that was going to go on and win, and I will do that. I will get the correct winner for you guys on the Friday preview. JK and Nito, you did a fantastic job. Also, 20XX got announced a couple of days ago. I believe that's the second weekend in November. We'll be covering 20XX as we usually do when that takes place in November. Make sure you sign up for that earlier than not so that TOs can be happy that you are coming. Hopefully a lot of people come out for the 20XX event. I have, on good authority, sources close to me telling me that there's something that's going to be a part of this 20XX that I have been publicly in support of and a big fan of. So if that actually comes through and happens, I'm literally going to spend an hour just telling you guys how awesome Dapple Productions is for doing this thing I heard that they might be doing. And if they don't, then, well, who cares? It's not doesn't affect me in any way. Today, we are going to chat with Emil, the head grand poobah of Ludi, the biggest tournament ever. Emil is, I don't think Emil has made many public comments on the record about Ludi, this massive tournament that's going on here. We're going to squeeze every bit of information out of Emil that we can today on the 200th episode of the Popcast. All that and more. But first, nice, Pinky. A topic I've been covering pretty consistently over the past 200 episodes or so of the Popcast has been these vote-in pickup scrim servers. Even back before I decided that I might start growing a beard to compensate for the fact that I can't grow anything on the top of my head. Been talking about midpoint, mostly making fun of midpoint because I always thought it was bad. But we've also every now and then had a conversation about the plus servers. Mainly talked about it in a negative light because, well, that's the only reason we ever talk about the plus servers is when we see something negative going on there. But the negative doesn't always, the negative doesn't come from the concept of the plus servers itself. Sindao created this environment, much like Sindao Q that he also created, and the rules of how this environment is supposed to work. Essentially just God coming down and saying, I'm making the planet, here's the laws of the planet, here's some people here, you guys figured this out, I don't know. That's essentially what Sindao did. Here's the +3 server, because +1's always been a thing, we just made it more public. Now here's +2, here's +3. Here's how it works. I'll create the voting things. You guys run it yourselves. Just like the Joker running Arkham Asylum. Just go nuts and let's see what happens. People always say, or I've seen some people say, that this community would be better if the plus servers weren't a thing. Well, if you've said that, I think you're kind of missing a point of what the real problem here is. I've seen people say the same things about social media. Man, the world's just gotten a whole lot worse since Twitter and Facebook became a thing. And they might be right. I'm not the well-informed, what is that, a sociology topic maybe, of how the social medias have changed the world. But in my perspective, I feel like social media is the first time in human history where we've gotten a real good look at each other. Before, you could only, you had your newspaper and you had your friend Frank across the street who had some information for you and maybe some people you worked with and whatever the news wanted to show you. Now, any kind of jackass across the planet can share their thoughts and it can be seen by any other jackass across the planet. I don't think it's, and we're starting to realize that everybody on this planet is a bit of a jackass. And I don't think it's people suddenly became jackasses overnight. I think it's just we're starting to become aware because of social media. Oh, we've been jackasses all along. I think if Twitter came out during ancient Roman times, people would come to the same conclusion then. It's just now in human history that we're starting to realize these things. And that's why we're saying, man, all of this kind of sucks. We would be a lot better without this. And it's like, no, this was always a thing. People were always like this. We're just now starting to acknowledge it because we see it pretty much every time we open up our phone here. So let's take that concept and apply it to SendOutQ. It's a community social experiment with the success of it dependent 100% on how the players take care of it. Again, SendOut just created it, turned it over to the players. You guys figure this out. And, well, kind of like giving a flamethrower to a baby. There's been a lot of flames being flung all over the place. SendOut released these screenshots just a few days ago. If you're not familiar, the voting server used to be that you had to get a 50%. That's not the right button here. Yeah, we'll go with that. You wanted to get 50% voting in order to be voted into the server of people that were already in. Things have changed. Going forward, starting next voting period, you have to get a 60% voting percentage in order to stay in. So just to kind of give people a heads up of what's to come, SendOut took the most recent votings and came out with all the people in the yellow down here were in with 50%, but starting next month, they're going to be kicked out because they didn't get 60%. It's real interesting when you look at it. First off, in +1, you have 12 people that are getting voted out, only one of them being a suggestion. Keep that in mind. It is Smexy Legend here. Former jackpot player, by the way. Not going to pass suggestion into +1. But that is 12 people of the 22 that didn't pass. They're going to be voted out because they didn't get 60%. In +2, more people, so you would assume that number would go up a little bit, and of course it does. What you see here is 25 people being voted out, only 3 of them being suggests. As you see, more than 50% of the people that got suggested did still get over 60% and would be voted into +2 server anyways. We got one more server to look at. And we've gone from 12 people voted out to 25. Oh boy, let's take a look at +3, which is now looking to be about half the size of what +2 is projected to be, as 70 people are going to be kicked out of the +3 server because they got 50%, but they didn't get 60% of the voting, with 11 suggests not finding their way in. She +3 does not like each other at all. And I got some more stats for you here. because and these aren't like secret stats. I just literally sit there and counted out all these the yellow names and the pink names and the red names to get some more statistics going on here. The vast majority of the craziness that's coming on here is the suggestions in the +3 that are not going to be making it in here. As you can see, 3 suggestions would pass with 60%. Dat Kid, Silver, and whoever Slurp Cat is. I'm not sure who that is. Now, if you counted how many suggestions are in the yellow and red section below here, it comes to a grand total of 51. So out of the 54 suggestions last month, only 3 would have gotten voted into the +3 server. That is a significant decrease from the percentage of +2 and +1 suggestions that got voted in. Now, to be fair, look at the information a little bit more critically. Of course, +3 is always going to get more suggestions than +2 and +1 because +3 is the entry level into the the beginning stages of the plus server. So you're always going to get more people suggesting +3, which in my mind would make sense that the acceptance rate in +3 would be lower than 2 and 1 because you're going to get a lot more like voters aren't going to be familiar with in the +3 category. But 51 people getting denied and only 3 getting in, that's an acceptance rate of 6%. Guys, this isn't Harvard. This is a practice server. We're talking about practice. The lowest level of practice to be banned from low ink from, and it's got a 6% acceptance rate as far as suggestions are concerned. So how did we get here? How did we come to this conclusion? When did things go so wrong that +3 is now going to be the same size as +1, and both of them combined would make up enough players to go into +2? How did we get to this point? And here's my theory, along with what several other people have theorized as well. That have had similar thoughts when this tweet went out over the course of the last weekend. When you guys played in low ink, and I'm looking at the people in this +3, there are tons of names that I remember for low ink over the past 3-4 years that have made up of it. We encouraged you guys to find scrim partners to grow. If you went 2 and 4 or 1 and 5 the first time you played low ink, and you complain about it, what is something staff kind of hinted at you and other people in the community hinted at you as well? Find that 1 or 2 teams that you had a good set against. Reach out to them, become friends with them, and scrim them and grow with them. Those are going to be your friends when you come alpha bracket. Those are going to be the teams that you play in grand finals of low ink when you get up to that point to where you're going up there. And several people took that concept to heart and still do. You still see that kind of concept being pushed out. And that's why people will get this narrative that low level is on the surface a wholesome part to be a wholesome part of the community to be a part of. Yes, there's outliers, there's a-holes everywhere. But still low level, because of that mentality that tries to get pushed out from low ink, encourages you to find and grow other teams that will go along with you other than just trying to do it by yourself. Until you get banned from low ink. /win low ink, you get banned that way. Then you're in high school. You've been through high school all along, and then you graduate, you get kicked out the door, and then you got some life choices you got to make. Do I go to college and be in crippling debt for the rest of my life? Do I go get a blue-collar job and actually make money, even though society will look down on me, but I'll be way better off if I go through and do that? Do I don't know, do I become a professional esport player? Who knows? Like, you got all these different choices to go through. That is what it's like to be banned from low level. If you want to continue with the next step, you are told by this community that the next step after being banned from low ink is to try to get your way into +3. Those of players Not everybody's going to get into plus 3, obviously. But for the players that get banned from low ink, and that becomes their next goal, several of them will get into plus 3. They might get purged out the next month. Doesn't matter. They eventually find their way into plus 3. They have to do it through good connections or just getting repeatedly monster upsets over players in plus 3 and plus 2 and sometimes in plus 1. Sometimes the combinations of both. Winning weeklies doesn't really count anymore to getting into plus 3. There are some people in that yellow categories that have first place medals and weeklies underneath their belt that are not going to be in plus 3 next month. The voting continues the same way that it has been. And when you get into this category, when you get banned from low ink and you start going to plus 3, you're in a different group of category in this community that you were before. Some might call it mid-level. Others would say that's not a real thing, but we can go along with that here. Your mindset is not to go look back at everybody that's still in low ink and think, well, these guys are going to be in the spot I'm in pretty soon. No, your mindset is, I'm banned from low ink. Therefore, everybody that's still in low ink is worse than me. And I know that to be a fact because I 100% thought that myself when I won low ink almost 3.5 years ago. Not that I look down on people, but when you won low ink or you get banned from it, you'll notice something kind of weird happens. All of a sudden, people who've never talked to you before start reaching out to you and say, hey, I would love to scrim you. Or, hey, let's set up a scrim sometime. I feel like we could learn a lot from playing you guys. Well, you never wanted to scrim us before, but now that we got our name out there, now you can't stop reaching out to us. That's an interesting kind of concept that that you'll experience at some point when you get banned from low ink. But how do you reach back down? How do you kind of not pull the ladder up with you, but help more people come up with you and start growing more of this mid-level that seems to exist after you find a way to get into a plus 3. But once you're in plus 3, and all those teams that you looked down on, all those players you looked down on because they didn't get banned from low ink at the same time as you still have that perception of them. It's no longer the team that you helped grow with when you were in low level. It's now somebody that's below you. And now if they get into plus 3, now they're on the same level as you. Now they get the same amount of clout as you because you're both in the same plus level of the plus server. So I feel like that kind of ego and mentality comes into play with some of these things. When players look at it and be like, I don't know. I was better than that person before, and me voting them is my way of saying, yes, you're now up to my level. And I feel like a lot of people, because of the stage of the community that you're in, a very fragile stage of the community that you have found yourself in, where you don't really have a place, you don't really have a label other than maybe a screenshot of me telling you don't play in low ink anymore. I can understand that mentality slightly. I'm not saying it's right, but I feel like that might be the mindset of what's going on here with why so many people in this plus 3 category are not as united and as supportive of each other as we're clearly seeing plus 2, plus 1, and all of low ink being at this point. And it's leading to some weird things. Now, there's obviously a bunch of other factors that go into that. The fact that plus 3 players have to vote on 200 people every single month, of course, nobody's going to do that. You might vote for your friends fairly, but if you don't know if you don't know who half of the people you're voting on are you literally going to sit down and be an informed voter and look through all 100 people's profiles and be like, yes, +1 for this person, no, -1 for that person? I honestly can tell you here from somebody who's been paying attention to American elections that not everyone is an informed voter, believe it or not. So to ask these players in plus 3 to be informed voters about all 200 people that they're voting for on a monthly basis, of course that's not going to happen. But you still see this huge sharp of divide of not helping each other out in the same way that +2 and +1 is clearly helping each other out in those kind of categories. For so long, the narrative of mid-level hell has been a TO issue. Well, there's no tournaments for us to play. Yeah, I'll play in SAC, but I mean, not everybody plays in SAC. It's not the same as low ink. Why don't they just make low ink except for mid-level players? You don't see that. And for so long, it was always the TOs that aren't doing enough to address the mid-level hell situation. I think what we're finally starting to see, because of this social experiment in the information being presented by this plus servers from Sindao, maybe it's not so much the TO issue here as it is the players themselves not taking care of each other and helping grow their own corner of the community. And I'm not sitting here saying TOs are free from criticism from the quote-unquote mid-level hell. Of course not. I will never be on the record saying that TOs can't do more and are free from criticism from anything. But from the data suggesting here, the players share a very large portion of the blame for everything that's just kind of falling apart in that category. They are statistically the most divided of all the skill groups, and also appear to be the most isolated at this point as far as just finding those few people to be in your little bit of circle, and you got your group, and you got how you vote the way that you guys all vote versus that group that votes all the way that they vote. And it seems to be little sections and pods of this +3 category that makes them a little bit more isolated from everything else. This is the point, though. This is nothing new. It's always been like this. Just like Twitter showing us who jackasses across the world are, there's been like that since the first two humans were on planet Earth and they started talking about each other behind their back to whatever frog was around. I don't know, whoever else the first two humans talked to. This isn't a new concept. We're just now becoming aware of it, though, because we have numbers to support this kind of division at the +3 level. And now that it's been exposed, and everyone, we've all known there's been voting issues with +3, but it's never been highlighted to this statistical extent before. So now discussion can take place of how to make things better. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, the voting should change or any of that stuff. I don't care. Like all the people that are in the yellow section here, I don't care if they're getting voted out of +3 or not. And I'm not sitting here saying that certain people deserve a shot to be in the plus server or that a certain number of people need to be voted in. I'm not saying any of that. I don't care. And if you're not in the plus server, I don't think that's something you should care about either. But what you should care about as far as what the plus server is concerned is how we all perceive it and how it's constantly being told to us that this is the next goal that you should be going for. And I see so many people say, I want to reach this level of the plus server, and that's one of your goals in the community. Fine, that's great. But I think one of the solutions to this now is why is the voting percentage being moved up from 50% to 60%? Because going forward, you can earn your way outright into a plus server based on your results in Sindao queue. So you don't have to get that 60%. You can just let results speak for you. What is something I've been saying probably all 200 episodes of this podcast. Plus server votings, looty divs, those are all opinions. Results are fact. And results are going to play a heavier role than they've ever done so far in this point. And I feel like that's a huge step into the right direction. But more so than anything, as much as I said I don't care about the yellow players here, I'm looking at some of these people that are in the yellow. I pay attention, obviously, to Proving Grounds. I pay attention to pretty much every tournament because I talk about it in the weekly recap, unless your tournament's on challenge because you hate everybody. But I'm seeing a lot of people in the yellow category, and I'm saying, I watched some of you literally 1v4 your Div 1 opponent in a looting match last week, or beat +1 players in a Proving Ground set 3-0 3 days ago, or have won a paddling pool at some point, or have constantly gotten upsets again and again and again, upsets over people that are in the plus server. My point is this: whether you are or ain't in a plus server doesn't mean shit as far as what actually happens in a tournament. You don't start a game with a 5-point lead because you're in a +2 server against somebody that's not. None of that matters. These things are just fake clout titles. What actually happens in a tournament is results that are fact, and that is never going to change. Some highlighted stuff. Man, just terminate +3, +2, and +1 on God. Did you not just hear anything I just said? That is the exact opposite of what I was saying, but fair enough. Gus, when I got into +3, I got messages from people I've never talked to and people who ghosted me when I asked for help. When I got low ink banned, asked me if I can get into their scrims. People sometimes don't build relationships to help each other, but for a personal game. Yeah. And Gus, that's I know you experienced that with a whole lot more than just playing the game, as you add on to your YouTube legacy there. So yeah, that's that kind of nonsense is only going to get worse from here on out. Triton said, I think the anonymity, oh gosh, you're using big words, in the relative consequences free nature of the internet makes some people more asshole-ish. Yes. Yeah. Which is why I like that the Popcast is here with my face. I'm saying these words. You guys can see it happen instead of just being a name behind a voice, a nameless, faceless voice behind a server. Who's joking? Was I joking or was someone else joking? Emil's joking. You could be +1 and not even. You can be div 1 and not even in +3. Apparently, I don't know how any of this works. Hey, we got a lot of stuff to talk about here. Let's try to speed through this weekly recap. SOS number 125 took place this past Wednesday. It was won by Blue Jim Karambit. Second place went to Free Dart Monkey, which I'm assuming is something to do with Balloon's tower defense. There'll be a thing all in on later. And Cherry Limeade rounds out your top three. Despite the Ludi season nerf, there were still 64 teams that played in this event. Not many matches take place on Wednesday, although I think somebody did play their week 3 match on this Monday as soon as maps came out. Hammerhead was won by Seventh Heaven, Mako Bracket won by Just Squidding, and Lantern Bracket won by Hakunova. In Proving Grounds number 23, In Control Red Sun took first place over Free Glue Gunner, and Foams number 22 takes home the bronze medal there. We did a double elimination format because 18 teams were left after check-in. A few dropped, and one team signed up even though they were playing a Ludi match an hour after the tournament started. They didn't actually play, so since we had 18 teams, decided to do a double elim since single elim would have been way too quick with that number of teams, and everything seemed to work out just fine. Don't expect it to be double elim next time. You guys can't cry and help desk. We're a single elim tournament by trade. SAC qualifier number 2 took place on Saturday. It was won by Captain Happy Crew. Get Your Money Up took second place, and Fishies on the Lake is the bronze medal winner in the gold bracket. Silver was won by Zero Luck Found. This is the second qualifier of 4 SAC qualifiers. Congratulations to Captain Happy Crew, but like I said last time, nobody remembers who wins any of these qualifiers. It all matters what you do in the finals. But we will see Captain Happy Crew with an opportunity to do that, going up against the Final Reckoning, who won the first tournament in the qualifier. Squid Junction number 53 took place on Saturday night. WZF won this tournament with In Control Red Sun taking second place and Foams, number 23, making third. We saw Foams 22 and 23 in back-to-back days. So the next time Foams signed up for a tournament, it's going to be the 24th edition of Foams. Foams has won a Squid Junction before, by the way, back in Splatoon 2. They did it without a shooter, I believe. People complain about the comp they go up against because Foams is fun to watch. It'd be cool if that was an actual team, but I don't know what those players do as far as what main teams that they're on there. The WZF team was Sam, Dizzy, Link, and Sinnoh, who won Squid Junction number 53. Mo Cup number 7 took place Saturday morning before Squid Junction. Pixio Pot takes first place. All Soda Burst was in second, and Flippa Floppa finishes in third place. This was a Clam Blitz only tournament, which seems to be the favorite mode of the community right now. Are people starting to realize Splat Zone's kind of cringe? Clam Blitz is actually pretty fun, so Mode Cup being a Clam Blitz only tournament this time around seemed to go over pretty well. Picnic number 3 was won by Jackpot on Sunday. Rest in Peace, Saith the Lord finished in second place, and Flippa Floppa got their second bronze medal in 2 consecutive days. 22-ish teams signed up for this Picnic number 3. But they were all quality teams. You don't need a crazy number of teams signing up for your tournament as long as it's a quality number of quality type of teams that are playing in this one. Jackpot winning the 3rd Picnic tournament. Whew. Looty, week number 2. Living in that Div 6, the Black Squid Ink Burger got a 5-4 win over the Ink Vaders. In Div 7, Whale Hello There got a 5-4 win over Clownfish. Div 1, Octopi got a 5-3 win over Rabid. Despite, half their players DC in one game, they still ended up winning it. Did everybody see that clip? That was so stupid, that clip that I saw. Div 8, Shark Bait got a 5-4 win over Priority. I wish I could read my own handwriting sometimes. And the best win of the week, in my opinion, goes out to Div 3, Thimbo IHOP, getting a 5-4 win over Orca Balarestra. Some people were pointing out, wow, this is an upset. Some of us have been paying attention to Thimbo IHOP over the past couple of months, realized that's not an upset. That's just Thimbo IHOP showing us what we're all slowly going to realize how good they are. Let's take a look at the Collegiate Cephalopod Association. We're just moving along here, and I hit this thing. So where is there it is. Again, this is sent to us by Riley Rooster, who usually gives us some information about the week. No, I don't want to do it. Oh, I should have loaded this beforehand. Division 1 of CCA saw the University of California Davis get a 4-3 win over Cal Poly Pomona. The Night Sharks of Central Florida also got a 4-2 win over University of California San Diego. In Div 2, California State University Long Beach got a 4-3 win over the University of Washington Huskies. The Louisiana at Lafayette team got a 4-2 win over Texas as well. In Division 3, DePaul University got a 4-3 win over the University of North Carolina Greensboro. And Cal State University Fullerton got a 4-3 win over the University of Texas at Dallas. In Division 4, Moravian University got a 4-3 win over Purdue. Virginia Commonwealth University got a 4-2 win over Washington State. And in Division 5, Villanova got Villanova beat Middle Tennessee last week as well. Did they play them again here? Champlain University College got a 4-2 win over Oklahoma. And in Division 6, VCU got a 4-2 win over Coastal Carolina. DePaul University got a 4-2 win over Alma College. Again, this information brought to you by Riley Rooster and our good friends over at the CCA. I'll get them on at some point in the middle of this season. In the NFL, the Rams got a 26-9 win over the Cardinals. The Chiefs got a 19-8 win over the Broncos on Thursday night with Taylor Swift in the house. The Steelers have a bye. That was your weekly recap. That wasn't even everything that went on last week. That was just 8 tournaments. There was the like the training tournaments where the like players could coach like low ink teams. That took place as well. It seemed to be going over pretty well. If it happens a few more times, I'll talk about it. But there's just no way I could sit here and talk forever that went on. What a weekly recap. Sponsored by this thing that I believe is known as a boppy. This right here. So it's a pillow that you put onto your lap, that a little bit higher up here for demonstration, and you I don't have the teddy bear in here, but you basically take your baby and you can lay the baby on the pillow so that you don't have to hold your baby the entire time. You can just sit them there on the lap, and sometimes they'll sleep on it, and sometimes he'll just cry and vomit on you on it. But still, if you're in the baby market, which more people are getting into the baby market every day, this is a must buy for parents that have a newborn or any small baby. And the function of it changes every 3 months when your kid can start sitting up and you need to do tummy time, and you can just place them in. Like, so many different functionalities about this thing. I believe we just call it a boppy. Yes, boppy trademark there. Official sponsor of today's segment of the weekly recap. Isaac put a voting on Twitter for Mode Cup. Splat Zones wasn't even an option. Well, was that because Splat Zones was the most recent one? Um, Congrats on 200. Thank you, Dinah. I know you've been watching these for a while. Best sponsorship ever. You missed the episode where it's sponsored by a booger sucker. That was a pretty good one. Oh, with that being said, it took us 47 minutes to get here, but we got here. So let's do this thing. Welcome into the Popcast, the grand poobah of Ludi, who somebody who also had someone who needs to mute me, I guess, or a little bit of feedback coming from me as well. But the head TO of Ludi, welcome into the Popcast, Emil. Emil,
What is up, big man? Popgun, how are you?
how's it
You're looking
going?
real dapper today. And
Thank you.
congratulations on your 200th episode of the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be it's good to be here. You were here on episode 50. You've been here a long time as part of me as well.
I was on episode 50, I was on episode 100, and now on 200. I'm not
Yes.
sure if I'm going to be on 300 or on 400. I'm not sure what pattern you're making exactly, but I'm looking forward to it eventually.
I think it's pretty obvious right now. I have no idea what kind of pattern I'm on either. Um how's morale? How are things going? It's Tuesday where you are.
Well, I injured myself 3 times this month. I was fined for like 10 years and nothing ever happened. And then I lost 3 wisdom teeth and I burned myself over some tea. So I'm in a bit of a bind right now, but
Oh.
um, I'm happy to be here anyway. And I think Luti is going really well. So I'm happy with that. There aren't any major issues. So we're just cruising along.
Well, I'm glad you're kind of battling through all that stuff to be here with us today. Um, do you use Twitter at all, or do you ever like check Twitter?
I do use it occasionally for the Luti account. I don't have a personal Twitter because I don't really like the whole blaming aspect of it, and I try not to get too deep into it. But I do need to use it a little bit more just to make sure that, occasionally I'll look for looty things or I'll look for things that are important about the European Championships or about certain major events happening, just to make sure that I'm not entirely out of the loop and that I can um, stay in with all the Splatoon happenings.
Stay in. Well, that's that's it's kind of unfortunate that we have to use that to stay in with the Splatoon happenings, but I guess there's not really much of an alternative.
I mean, you had the Splatoon forums that we used to have, where we even posted the first Luteon, but I'm not sure if the splat boards are exactly what we need either right now. I think Twitter might be the best.
The chess tournament that took place, I think it was about last year. There was the Splatoon Chess Invitational that Brush put together. You won that one, and you're lucky because you weren't in my group, and I got
I
upset before you
was.
could play each other. Um, did anybody pose a threat to you? Do you recall anybody giving you trouble in that one?
Definitely. Well, to be honest, when you joined, I was like about to just jokingly start a chess in the park game with you because that's a Discord feature now, but then I decided against it. No, the Discord the Splatoon chess invitational was very interesting. There were actually some plays that were quite good, and also I don't perform that well in these sort of online tournaments against people I don't know. I tend to get upset quite a bit. Um, I think there were some players that were definitely I had close matches against. I do think that just basically ELO rating wise, I was probably the highest seed by a bit. But
Yeah, yeah.
um, in these kinds of events, um, anyone can upset anyone, right? And it's just ELO, and on the day you can have a good day or a bad day. So it was very interesting. I think both of my semi-final matches were like 3-2-ish games, and I might have had one tiebreak win, something like that. So it was definitely interesting enough to do again. So if you want to organize one, I'm happy to join.
Oh no, no, that was a brush thing. I'm a participant. I'm still upset because I won my group and then Magic upset me technically in a game five, and I haven't gotten over that yet. So I would much rather somebody run it and I play in it, as long as you are in the opposite corner of the bracket than me, um, than hosting it myself. So look, people don't care about chess stuff unless you're brush. 618
Me.
teams, and that's not where the number is right now. Obviously, that was it when registration closed. Uh,
Mhm.
where do these teams come from? How do you get that many teams?
Yeah, it's just absurd for Luti. The thing for Luti is that we have virtually no commercial activities like these other tournaments do. You see your super jumps, you see your basically every IPL event ever, basically any event ever regularly posts these amazing videos and there's very high quality streams that we can only dream of, right? But yet these events just do not get the attention and the playmanship that we get. And it's basically two things that cause people to play Luti. First, or any tournament whatsoever. First, you have to get to know it, and then you have to want to play it again, right? If you have multiple issues, hopefully, if you play an issue 2 and 3 and 4, hopefully that'll cause you to play in issue 5 and 6 as well. And Luti has this curse placed upon it. I'm not sure if it's a curse or a blessing, but there are a lot of newer players in Splatoon, and newer players really like this division thing. And so the hook that we have is that basically without us having to do anything for it, and in the past I've even intentionally not done anything just to keep the numbers a bit lower than what we would like. But there's just so much mouth to mouth advertisement that's being done on Luti without any of our involvement, but that just happens in all sorts of places that we don't know of, stuff like what are these apps that are being used by like the youth of nowadays, right? The stuff that people half our age are using. These sorts of apps, they just get spammed with division stuff and with looty stuff, and people asking what's going on. And then when you actually find out what it is, then I think we also have this thing that is actually quite nice to play in and actually quite nice and an environment to be in. Um, So I think it's just this combination where first of all we have a lot of people being able to join simply because of the mouth to mouth advertisement that's being done, and that sort of advertisement is just a lot better, a lot just not better in terms of quality, but in terms of you just get a lot more people if you have friends that are talking about it, right? It just works better than any Twitter feed or any video that you can place online. And then people are actually staying in Luti as well because we just see a lot of people that play in, that start out in season 7 and then also play in season 8 and season 9, season 10 and season 11, just keep going because a lot of people actually like playing it. And so it's this quite unique place where it's both very easy to get access to and also it keeps people coming back. So I think that's just the luck of the draw that we have with our format and the server that we have and being there quite early. That's causing this exponential growth of all sorts of players that would never play in any other tournaments but are hearing about this and just keep playing in it until the end of time.
Yeah, Ludi has a sort of brand recognition in this community, even if you don't really recognize what Ludi is. Whenever somebody new joins the IPL server and they see the scrim section, they see people asking for scrims at a certain div level, and they always come to us and say, "How do I get my div so I know what div I am?" And we're
Yeah.
always like, "Bruh, you're not even in the right server for that." But that is to your point that you're getting at. That is true. People might not know what Ludi is initially, but they know what Ludi divs are, and then they find out about it through that. And I've asked you this question before about does that bother you that a good chunk of the community cares more so about what their seed is for this tournament rather than playing the tournament out themselves. And you said no at the time, but I want to ask you again now that we're a few years later. Does does the allure of Ludi being the divs themselves does that play any negative role versus the fact that it is an actual tournament that people have to play for 2 months?
Well, it's nice that you're sort of linking it to the Twitter thing. Because indeed, I think you're right that maybe 2 years ago, I basically didn't go on Twitter at all. And now that I'm actually reading about what people are posting, and also just in Discord channels, basically anywhere, is that anytime you hear of Looty, like if you look for Looty in any server and then there are two messages, the message before that was, what is a division? How do I get my division? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's even though we're not trying to link it, it's sort of indistinguishable or inseparable from each other, right? Whenever you think of one, you think of the other. And it does sort of um it does sort of strike me as a little bit annoying that um but on the other hand, you can't blame people either because it's just something that people like doing, right? People like seeing themselves grow. People like seeing numbers go up, right? It's why RPGs is such a popular format. People just like seeing themselves get better and numbers go up, and they like to put some definitive value on it. And so even though it's not my favorite thing in the world, and I think we always try and emphasize whenever people are asking help desk and like, oh, I joined from this team to this team. What division does that make me? And we're like, well, you're not any division. You're just playing in a tournament, and you just happen to be in a certain group, and you're not anything. You're just playing in a tournament.
You
But yeah, it
know,
is still something nice that people can work towards.
and I can attest to that as well. Like my team started off Div 6, and then we went up one div each season we played, and it felt good to be like, okay, this shows some growth, or it's some sort of way to measure ourselves versus where we were before. But even though when you stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense because you're just judging everybody else that signed up for the tournament, not the entire community. Um, but 618 freaking teams. I know for a fact you were not expecting that kind of number. Um, is was Ludi built for this many teams? Is there ever a point where you're like, okay, we can't take more teams? Like, there's no way this is gonna work.
Well, every season, I'm just thinking like, well, how many more teams can there be? I feel like we've had every single team. There just can't be any more people in this community. Like, if there was 400 last time, that has to be all of them, right? There can't
Right.
be any more of them. Um, you know, it's fortunate that basically the biggest um point of sort of friction is, I think, the seeding, because that's just the one thing that will always require manual effort, right? And Lean can make bots that, you know, report scores and that give people captain roles, and it doesn't really matter if you're doing it for 10 people or for 100 people or for 1,000 people, right? You just do a lot of these things automatically. And I work with sheets as well, like a fantasy bracket, right? It doesn't matter if 10 people sign up or 100 people sign up. I just put the numbers in and do the right formulas, and then the numbers roll out. So the only real lock is the fact that we have to have some period to seed, and then we have to have people willing to invest their own time into seeding. And we also have to make sure that the seeding process, doesn't take 2 months, because then if you're seeding teams for 2 months, then at the start of those 2 months, as at the end of those 2 months, teams are going to be completely different, and nobody will want to play in the tournament anymore because they signed up 2 months ago, right? So I think this is a main point of focus. So I think indeed, if it comes to fruition to a point where we have almost too many teams to join Luti, which is sort of what we're going for right now, right? If we're really reaching that 1,000 team mark, which just seems insane, but I also thought 600 was insane and was never going to happen. So if that happens, then maybe we do have to shift to some sort of format where it's more based on relegation and promotion, like you would in soccer, where if you just win Division 5, then next time you're going to be in Division 3 or something, right? And we don't have to
Right.
manually intervene. And we could just put, you know, maybe even of the 1,000 teams, we can just immediately put in 700 teams or 800 teams that are like guaranteed a spot. And then the last two and 300, maybe we can, look at them or something. But um, it's also going to be very hard because, of course, um, teams change all the time. If there's two people in a Division 2 and two people in a Division 5 team and they make a team together, it's going to be hard, right? You can't just fix a team into one division. Um, but there's definitely going to have to be some manner of thinking about how to change a format in case that Luti is becoming too big. And I hope that I'm not going to be the one to do it.
Well, you say hope, but well, look where we are now, and we'll see how things go in the future.
There is no more hope.
I think this is a question a lot of people in the lower divs would kind of like an answer to. In I believe it's Div 8 through 10 where there's 96 teams. Why are those divs have so many teams in them versus adding on I bless all the way down to like a Div 14?
Um, yeah, very good point. And realistically, we could do it, right? There isn't anything in the rules that specifies there have to be 11 or 12 divisions or something. So, in principle, it is still an option, right? But I think the main thing is that we have to keep, I think there's two things to keep in mind with this sort of thing. That A, we have to make sure that the seeders can actually do something and not have to spend even more time filtering through all these teams. And B, maybe people like having some sort of ideal idea of a Division 9 team that has stuck in place. Like Plato used to have these ideal ideas in the sky, like this is the ideal chair, and then any real world chair is just an an example or sort of an imperfect substitute of that ideal chair, right? There could be something as like an ideal Division A team or an ideal Division 9 team, and I think people could think to keep that sort of strength, for lack of a better term, in place for multiple divisions, multiple seasons in a row, so that people can at least compare the two a little bit, which might break apart if you make more and more and more divisions. But also, it's just the simple fact that, you know, these 96 teams that are in Division 9, most of them are going to have good games against each other. And of course, there's not no skill difference between the best teams and the worst teams in the division. But it would take another, day or two to separate all these teams and to come to um, a good idea of which team should be in a division higher or a division lower. So I think at some point our seeding council just decided And maybe I'm putting the blame in your hands right now and saying that the seeding council decided, even though I decided. But we as a collective decided that it would be good enough if these teams played each other and there wasn't too significant of a skill gap, so that um, we valued getting the divisions out a little bit earlier over maybe trying to spend more and more time trying to really get at every single team and decide whether it will be high division nine or low division nine, right?
Well, one thing you kind of mentioned there is just letting the teams play each other and let it kind of sort itself out that way. That's kind of what Flutie
Mhm.
is, and Flutie has been well received. It seemed it seems like people really enjoy playing in Flutie, and I think that's representative from the last one having 300 teams. I believe that's the biggest grassroots one day tournament ever. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. That's not a part
No,
one
and
of
I
the
think it's only
Nintendo
the
tournaments.
only it's only the also I think the only tournament over 100 teams ever that wasn't covered on the podcast, which is quite interesting.
Was I off that week? I think I was off that week. No, that
That
was Doughboy. That was the
was
week
dope, right?
Doughboy was
Yeah.
on. So yeah, my bad. I mean, look, I'm sitting here talking about it now. Okay. So here's the question: in the off season of Ludi, has there ever been more thought of why don't we just throw some fluties out there just for fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, um, hosting Flutie is amazing because it's just a tournament that almost everyone who plays in it enjoys. Right? It's just really nice to have a number of matches against teams that are pretty close to you. But again, as you get more and more teams involved, the time investment just becomes immense, right? Especially if you have to pseudo seed 400 teams next time, right? It's just immense. So we could try and make more fluties in between seasons. But at the same time, I'm already making sort of a 2 month commitment for Luti, and then in 3 months there will be another Luti. So I also like spending some time on my master's thesis and my data analysis job and that sort of thing. So I need a little bit of time on the side to do things that aren't Splatoon related. And I think Flutie could work, but I'm afraid of risking another 400 team event that I have to host, like with three people, and then I'm just busy for a week trying to seed everything and make everything ready. I think it could work maybe if again we transition to a more deterministic seeding process where if you just played in Division 4 last time, now you get, or played in Division C last time and won it, you go to Division B now or something, right? A sort of deterministic idea. Um, but it's really just a time issue on my end where I'm not sure. And of course, there might be more staff members that are willing to pick it up now because we do have some new amazing staff members like Thoma and Toasty who joined recently, who have been amazingly helpful. Um, I think it definitely depends on will we just have the time and effort required to make this into another amazing event because with events of this size, you just need a solid team of TOs that are willing to spend a significant amount of time on it. And so far, I've basically been the only one insane enough to do something like this. So in the future, there will have to be more people as insane as I am who are also willing to spend enough time on it and who are willing to do something like this. But it's definitely such a fun event that you almost have to do more of them, right? Because it's as you said, it's almost amazing how little complaints there are on Twitter and the like. I've seen tournaments with 20 teams in it, which have significantly more complaints than Flutie has. So it's very strange how that seems to happen every time.
Well, the genius of Flutie is if you don't like the seed that you get, then you can just win your div that day, and then everyone's got. Yeah, you're right. You got underseeded. So what? We'll fix it next time.
Indeed.
So be it. So
But that
I
does only work, of course, if there's going to be a Flutie in the next, 2 or 3 weeks, because if there isn't, then you're just seeded low for one tournament, right?
yes, but hey, those results will last forever in their heart. Not in the plus server voting though, unfortunately. Um, So I think you just confirmed another question that I was going to have. Uh, People like to say, well, when's the next Ludi season? It's been so ever since the last Ludi season. So you are confirming here that the length of time between one Ludi season and the next is based around your master's thesis.
Roughly. Yes. No, you, Luigi is one of those things where just you just have to have a leader figure or someone to carry it through, right? Someone who's just going to be there on the day and just make sure that everything's right. Because as the size of the tournament increases, I can't let that many people down, right? If it's a 14 tournament and you're like, oh, can we move it to next week because I don't have time, then it's fine, right? But for Luti, you can't just be, well, like, oh, all 3,000 people that showed up today, sorry, there's nothing. Let's do it in 3 weeks, right? That just doesn't fly. So for Luti, you need a very solid planning. And I'm hoping to soon, if I wouldn't have the time to be able to throw it over to someone else. But at the same time, I'm also a person who's afraid of losing too much responsibility in this respect. Um, so I'm sort of in this spot where I don't want to risk an event not happening to give it over to someone else. But also, there's this psychological thing where you're like, well, it's a bit like your baby, right? When you're thinking about your son and you're handing him over to someone else, I'm like, well, is this going to be all right if I'm handing him over to this random stranger that I've never met? Maybe not, but I think we have some really good TOs now. So maybe in the future they'll be able to come up with some great plans as well, and I can leave it in their hands just fine. And I think we definitely can. Maybe I have too much of an issue with giving work to other people because I always feel bad if I have to give 4 hours of work to another person, and then I'm not sure if they actually like having that work. Because of course, a lot of TOs that we have, they really do enjoy the work as well. They love doing it, but I don't want to saddle other people with work that I could do doing myself, right?
It is no, I completely understand that. Doing for my IRL job in low ink, it's understandable. And a lot of the people that you kind of mentioned there that have done a lot of great work for Ludi coming in this season have been involved in a lot of things as well. So it's almost like there's people that are just that crave to do TO and work for this community. I always sing the praises for Toasty because I'm a big fan of him, obviously. Um, so just kind of talking about your staff, I don't know if you saw this morning. Somebody in your feedback channel um, called for the person who made the map list to be fired. So I was just wanting a confirmation. Has any staff member been fired over the map list yet, or do you plan on doing that at some point this season?
I will say, I think this might be the first season where I didn't make the map list. I think every other season you can blame me. Might be the first season where you can't specifically blame me. I mean, you still can because I should have looked over it, but I did hand the responsibility over to someone else, but I will not throw them under the bus publicly in this forum. So you'll have to ask them yourself, or they'll have to come and explain it themselves, because I'm not about to break my relationships with these people that I value very much and stuff.
So you're not going to fire anyone, but are you going to step down as a head TO because of the map list?
Hopefully, that would be nice.
that, that that's the exit ticket out of all of this. Was the
So there's not like it's too bad. I'll have to stop. Yeah, I don't think it'll be the catalyst, but we'll see.
got done in by humpback pump track? That's the worst way to go. Um, I mean, a 24/7 help desk for 2 months. Are there any good stories that you have to share from like the help desk or the complain about your div channel? I mean, I feel like there's sometimes where you guys see something and you're just like, this guy is such an idiot, but we're just going to make fun of them for like our own like sanity to get through this. Do you have any good story that comes to mind?
I I always feel bad trying to mention the biggest idiots in this community because it's like on Twitter when you talk about the biggest idiots that you've ever seen and that managed to crawl their way to a keyboard and type something out that makes virtually no sense whatsoever. Um, because I feel like throwing shade at these people that could be like 10 years old and French and understand like three words of English is going to be rough. But you do get a lot of them, right? Especially in Luti, which is quite new. I remember there being a tournament with a prize quite recently. I'm not going to mention the tournament that I hosted because then people will go to the help desk and look at this person. But this person was completely new to Splatoon, was entirely new to this, basically the entire tournament scene. And every single day before the tournament, they kept asking me specifics about the prize that they were going to win for winning the tournament. And so the prize for this tournament was like a an airplane trip to a country and like some kind of paraphernalia, some kind of knickknacks that were cool. And they were constantly asking me, like, oh, if I'm winning the tournament, could I please not fly with EasyJet because I don't really like their seats? Could we please get an airplane company that's a little bit nicer, like Iceland Air? And this paraphernalia, does it not contain any plastic? Because I don't really like the plastics having in my house. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not sure about the airline company. I'm not sure about the paraphernalia. And then when they played in the tournament, they got like 3-0'd in the first round by some
Right.
random team that I'd never heard of. But they were incredibly concerned with the exact prizes that are going to win and then make sure that they were great, even though they'd never played in a tournament before. That was quite cute.
I like that though. That's the mentality you got to have before you even set foot in the tournament. Start saying, "Hey, when I win this thing, just go ahead right now. Go ahead and start fixing some of these things because like I'm not getting on that airplane that I'm going to win a ticket to."
Exactly.
I like them the moxie there. Um that sparked another question that I had that I just thought of though. When Ludi divs come out, how many DMs do you get?
I surprisingly few this time. It used to be pretty bad, but I think we've ridiculed them so much in the Complain About Your Division channel that people aren't taking it too seriously anymore. Like usually people go to the Complain About Your Division channel first, and then afterwards they go to my DMs when they aren't being taken seriously there. But if they're taking being taken so unseriously and being made fun of, then they might feel like it's pointless and they'll just play, right? And I think most of the DMs I get are fairly reasonable now, because of course, every single Looty season with like 600 teams, there have to be one or two that we just sort of missed certain tournament
Oh
results
yeah.
for. Of course, it's not
Oh yeah.
missed because they also didn't give us anything, and their IGNs are probably weird, but even given that, they probably have played in some tournament that we never found and that, should have put them like four division higher than they should be. Um, so there are some reasonable results, but I think we quashed them quite well by making the Complain About Your Divisions channel and ridiculing the people in there. There were some people that were pretty mad about the seeding council this time again and saying, oh, the seeding was incredibly rushed and who's on the seeding council because obviously they don't know anyone, even though they seeded out of the 618 teams, they seeded 610 teams perfectly fine and just missed like four of them. But those four teams that you missed, you really misseeded. So I don't think you're that qualified to be on the seeding council.
I think that's my favorite part of being on the seating council is I can just give my thoughts and then you guys can take all the heat for the crap that I just kind of make up as far. I'm just guessing most of the time when I'm entering my divs, right? I'm just going
Mhm.
I've just faked it till I made it all this time. So,
Well, it's the wisdom of the crowds anyway, right? The same thing when you're guessing the weight of a cow. If you throw enough shit at the wall with enough people, then the average is going to be good. So that's why we have 10 people that are just making random guesses, and the average is probably going to be all right.
yeah. It's hey, you got people are having fun, they're playing the tournament and that's all that really
Mhm.
matters at the end of the day. Okay, so I'll be honest. When I reached out to you, I didn't know you were hosting the EU championships. Could you share
I figured as much, to be honest.
so what did you do with that? Like give us some information about that.
Yeah, because I think I saw an episode like 2 weeks ago where you were like, "Oh well, I don't know who hosted the European Championships. Maybe
Yeah.
someone in chat will know." And I was in chat. I was like, "Wait, you don't know that I hosted like a bunch of them?" The Nintendo of Euro, because of course I'm European, all right? I'm Dutch in this case. And Nintendo Europe is pretty separated. So, I mean, I can't say that I exactly know how everything goes within the confines of these meeting rooms. But I do know that they definitely don't have weekly meetings with like the people from Nintendo UK and the people from Nintendo Germany and the people from Nintendo everywhere, where they discuss exactly how it's going, right? So a lot of these events are being left to just one person of a specific country, right? And of course, they do have specific guidelines that they set, like, oh, this roughly has to be the format that we're going to use, and this is roughly the time where you're going to be doing it. But it's really not as well built up and as well managed as you might think, right? It's quite random. And for UK and Nintendo Germany, you might have some organization behind it. But I'm in one of those countries, right? The Netherlands and Belgium. These are sort of on the edge of where planning meets complete randomness, right? Because in Nintendo Poland or something, it's basically complete randomness, right? If we get one team out of it that's reasonable, you're going to be lucky. But in Nintendo Germany, you're going to have a pretty decent event. But this is sort of the exact event that I like because I do get to decide certain things, right, for the Nintendo Netherlands. And I got contacted by them because um, and this is not to like humble brag or anything. This is just relevant to this particular thing and
Right.
why I got contacted. That I did win a number of Dutch championships in the past, and so they already had my email and my phone number and that sort of thing. So it was quite easy for them to contact me. And they knew that I had hosted these tournaments recently, like Luti, if you'd heard of that one, or that sort of thing. So they reached out to me and said, "Hey, Emil, can you host our tournament? Because in the past, these tournaments haven't always been hosted that well. Um, you might remember the Nintendo UK where there was a qualifier in Birmingham, and the people heard of the qualifier like 3 days in advance, and they had to travel there and make plans and make teams. And there were certainly definitely still problems with it, um, especially with considering time, because we were also one of the first events that we had to do. I hosted both the Dutch and the Belgian championships, by the way, because they didn't have anyone for the Belgian championships either. So I just decided to do that one as well. So they could just run alongside each other, right? Um, but it was quite rough because we were one of the first championships that had to be held for some unknown reason. And so by the time that everything was decided, I only really had about a week or two to launch it and to make everything. Whereas, the German championships, they were hosted, a month later, so they already had all this information. Um, and I'm a bit sad that probably we didn't quite get the entrance that we would have liked. Um, in previous years, we definitely had more entrants for the Dutch championships. But in this year, I think it was basically the time issue that just prevented me from being able to gather more teams. I think we had good teams in the end, and all the teams that really wanted to join could join. But the first event, again, I had to basically announce it a week or two before the event actually started, and people had like 2 weeks to make a team. Whereas I would have liked, a month or two for people to be able to form and for me to be able to make certain things. And that was simply just the case because Nintendo of Europe had certain guidelines that they needed to do. And of course, I had some input in the guidelines, but I don't have that much input in the guidelines. So I still had to wait for all that. Them saying, okay, it's okay, okay, you can do this, okay, you make a bracket like this. Um, and in the first qualifier event that I held, there were about, I think, 8 teams. And in the last one, 2 weeks later, there were already 16 teams. It like doubled. So I think it definitely would have helped if I just had like 2 more weeks to do everything and to have some more people because that would have helped with entrance numbers a lot as well.
Well, it you kind of mentioned how there were more teams in the past than what there were this past year. Um, when was the last time there was tournaments? Was it 4 years ago? Was it 2019?
There was one, I think there were 2 or 3 championships before 2019. And then there was a COVID year championships. I think that was 2020. And the team that won that, which is sort of the same sort of kind of lineup that has won it like 5 times now, except for me then, who wasn't in that all the time. Um, they didn't get to go to the European Championships because it was cancelled. But there was still a Dust Championships. But just the winners didn't get the prize that you would like them to give, which is to go there just because of the whole COVID situation.
Yeah, and that's well, I guess the point I'm getting to is when it comes to North America, they throw tournaments at us left and right, and even tournaments we don't even ask for. They give us here's a random turf war tournament for this Saturday with a backpack prize or something like that. Whereas it seems like Europe hasn't been getting much up until now. Obviously, this past year, every country that was participating had their championship with a European Grand Finals, which led to a eventually a World Championship. I so it's good to see these more events coming back to Europe, but it still feels like, and of course, I'm talking with people that are going to be listening to this in South America that are like, "What? You guys get Nintendo tournaments? What is that?" But like, why do you feel like this could be the step to more things to come from Europe, to where it's more, you see more events coming down the pipeline, as opposed to the in the past where there hasn't been as many events?
I would like to, but I think that the differences between Europe and the rest of the world are just too significant. Because if you usually Nintendo has these quite strict laws on what exactly they can do and they can't do, right? It's very protective of everything that it has. And Europe just has different laws all around. And so if you host a tournament in one country, then you sort of have to host it in all kinds of countries because Nintendo can't really favor one European country over the other. But they can favor America over each other, right? Or they can favor Japan over other regions, right? Because they're just so massive. And America does have um, a big enough center and a big enough gathering of people behind Nintendo that they're able to host these events with regularity and not be that bothered if it's not like a major thing and they just can throw some stuff out there. And definitely with Japan where these sorts of events are quite common. But in Europe it's always going to be rough because I'd like to host, a Nintendo Netherlands event. But then, Belgium's going to ask, oh, why don't we have any Belgian events? And then France is going to ask, why don't we have any France events? And then Spain and then Portugal and another 15 countries, right? So it's just a lot harder to set something up in Europe because of A, their laws, which are different every time, and B, the fact that we have all these countries and many of which don't really have any dedicated people that are working on Splatoon. Right? Even the people I worked with the Dutch Championships, they're not just Splatoon people, right? They're just a Nintendo person that also happens to do Splatoon, but on the side in Mario Kart and all sorts of things, right? So I think we just lack dedicated European Splatoon people and countries to be able to solidly use events like this.
What about, you kind of mentioned the different laws that each country has? Do prizes play a factor in that at all? Because I think the narrative with why anything south of Mexico is not allowed in the North America Open, even though there are other countries south of Mexico that are technically in North America, is because like the gaming chairs shipping to those countries would be an issue or something. Like, could you do prizes play an issue with those roles that you're talking about? Those rules, I guess.
Well, Nintendo, I believe, has a very strict no money policy anyway. Um, I think basically any Nintendo connected event just is not allowed to have any money attached to it, right? If I'm hosting an event, right, the first thing they're asking is, if it's Splatoon, if it's Nintendo related, it's okay. Do you have any prize money? Because if it is, we're not touching it, right? You just can't do that, and that makes prizes quite hard to do because, of course, um, if a Polish team wins a championship or a Portuguese team or a Dutch team, you can't just have one prize in a specific point, right? And I think it is indeed just like the shipping and just getting there. Because if you want to send a gaming chair, if it comes from the UK, it's going to be really hard to get it all the way to Finland or to Poland or something, right? So there's definitely an issue with just not being able to get prizes from one place to the other and currencies and all that sort of thing. So it's definitely, I would say, a roadblock in preventing prize events from Nintendo. which they would like to hold if they're hosting an event, right? They would want to put prizes on it.
I recall the first time I had you on, I asked you a question about Nintendo's involvement with or wanting to get involved with the competitive esports scene in general. And I think one of the things you kind of alluded to was Nintendo doesn't want the image of the child being competitive in like their home with the video game instead of like doing other things that they probably should be doing where they're like, and that makes sense, like the Wii U will constantly tell you every 30 minutes, hey, maybe go touch some grass and stretch a little bit before playing this game a little bit more. Do you, when you say Nintendo will shy away from anything that has prize money in it, do you think that's kind of like the narrative that they're going with, is that like we don't want, like, for when it becomes about money, then this crosses a competitive line we don't want to go across? Or is it something more like what chat's bringing up with how like when there's money on the line it technically becomes gambling laws in some countries?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure if the gambling laws have something to do with it. If I had to guess from my talking to Nintendo people, I would guess it's definitely the we don't want this to turn into an esport and we want to keep Nintendo family friendly kind of thing. Where if have a mother that's looking at a Nintendo stream and they're looking at, Yoshi jumping around in a field of in a plains or Mario doing things or Inkling splatting each other, right? They really don't want to associate that with these tournaments with high competitive integrity and high octane type of tournaments that children might lose a lot of time in and like lose their entire life in trying to play them. So I would guess it's most definitely the this aspect of which are basically hitting the nail on the head with this is they just don't want parents of kids thinking that they'll be addicted to this sort of thing and it's just a nice thing on the side, right? Which won't cause any trouble for their kids.
And that's understandable. It's, Nintendo's the company that creates the game. They're the ones making money off of it. So it's how they present it is obviously made them successful up to this point. I guess the frustration
Mhm.
from the competitive, the very small portion of the market of the gaming share of Splatoon that we are, is that it makes us feel like we're kind of neglected by Nintendo, even though we are getting these events that are, in the more events that are popping up in Europe. But I don't know. I guess that's where my main complaint is. Why I constantly kind of dunk on them here on the podcast is just because it feels like their their efforts to improve the competitive scene, or it's that we, the community, see them hosting these events as an effort to improve things on the competitive side, when that's not really the truth at all. It's just more so to continue to sell the game to the casual audience. Um, but I
Mhm.
mean, that's, you can't blame them for that, honestly.
No, you're absolutely right. But to be fair, when I won the Dutch Championships and I got to take a plane trip to, Switzerland or to France and to spend nights in a hotel there with all these other Splatoon people and to go to these massive lands and then all that sort of thing. I mean, if you told me to, freight that trip for 500 euros, which might be the equivalent, I definitely wouldn't do that, right? That sort of experience is going to be with me for my entire life. So um, money's always going to be nice, and everyone can use money, but Nintendo does give these alternatives, which are, if you're really a high level competitive player that can, make your year essentially, and I wouldn't necessarily trade that for money. So I can also definitely see why they would prefer to give people that sort of prize rather than the money. But yeah, it is a shame that it's setting a barrier towards making Splatoon or this sort of thing into an esport because yeah, you just cannot really play Splatoon professionally as your job unless you're doing it, on YouTube and getting a lot of subscribers and a lot of Twitch money or that sort of income. It's just playing the game, you just cannot really make a sustainable income.
Do you still play the game, just like recreationally?
I think my Nintendo Online subscription ran out about 3 days ago.
Uh oh.
I might be getting a new one. Uh, I'm now realizing how expensive it is if you're just using it for Platoon. Um, it depends if I feel like playing it in a bit anymore. I'm on a small hiatus now as I'm, trying to do more other things, but I might come back to it in a little while. Right.
What weapon do you think you would main, or would you just kind of play whatever you feel like that day?
I am hoping that these patch notes tonight will patch Gold and Dynamo. That would be really nice.
you're
Gold and
you're gonna
Dynamo
need a
is
lot of
amazing.
patches to fix that thing.
It's going to need a lot of patches. It's basically going to need to make that gap in its hitbox just non-existent. And you just when you like hit people that they actually die, that would be really nice. That fix would be good. Otherwise, I'm still partial to my 96, which I played for, 7 years, or um, something that you don't really have to try with, like something that spams Suka a lot. That'd be nice.
With the kind of updates we get through the patch notes, it's not going to be a Zuka nerf. It's going to be some sort of dynamo buff. They're going to fix your issue before they fix the Zuka that's eliminating anchor
I'm okay
players
with that.
across the world. You'll be
What do you
happy.
think of Dynamo Azuka?
That's okay. It's let's wrap this up here. I would have you plug yourself, but you don't really have a Twitter other than the Splatoon account. Is there anything you want to plug?
Um, I'm working for a football club right now in play statistics, which is called AZ, if you're a Dutch fan. So go to their games and say hello to me or support them. That would be good. Otherwise, um, the Popcast is available every Monday at 2 a.m. European time, which it is now. So try and
Thank
watch
you.
that if you have the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure some people in the chat might be interested in listening to the podcast in the future. We'll we'll have you on in another couple of years. So thank you again for coming on. Thank you for staying up late. And eventually I'll
No
catch up
problem.
to you and I'll arrive on Tuesday with you. So so yeah. Hey,
Sure, I'll warn you if anything happens.
any thoughts of going to Breeze or any EU land in the future?
I would love to. I think on the day of Breeze, I might have a presentation on my master's thesis, so I can't make it that day.
Mm.
But I'd definitely like to go to some lands in the future. I've participated in the UK championships as well as a one member that isn't UK on a UK team because you were allowed one non-UK member on your team at that point. So that was really fun. I've gone to the Dapples lands. I really like them. Um, So yeah, I'm hoping for anything like that in the future, but I can't guarantee anything because I do have a life, unfortunately.
don't, don't we all, or at least we like to pretend to. Hey, thank you again for coming on, and good luck throughout the next month and a half or so as Ludi season comes to an end. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, and see you in 199 episodes.
Yeah, it'll be. We'll get there eventually, and that was Emil checking in from the Netherlands at I guess about 3 a.m. local time. I did offer Emil a earlier time. I was like, "Look, I'm taking a half day at work. I can come in," but Emil was like, "No, let's just do it the normal time." So there we go. The second EU person I've convinced to stay up deep into a Tuesday morning to come onto the show. But I'm happy. I love having Emil on. We're always smarter after hearing the things that Emil has to say. So always enjoy whenever we have him on and we can talk about things like that. There you go. 200 episodes in the book. We'll go with 201 on Friday when we preview Low Ink. Until then, if you'd like to be a part of the podcast in any way, feel free to reach out on my socials below. Twitter, Mr. underscore Popgun, Twitch at Popgun25, YouTube at 25 Popgun, and Blue Sky, just normal old Popgun. Let's go see what Jackpot is up to. Between now and Friday, make sure you wear a mask, get vaccinated, stay safe, don't do anything dumb, and play your Ludi sets. Get those things in on time.